Rain glazed the ambulance bay at 3:02 a.m., turning the concrete into a sheet of dark glass. The sliding doors at Camden Harbor Medical Center shuddered, then parted as two men in dark suits strode in from the parking lot. They did not stop at the registration desk. The night clerk started to speak, saw the look on the taller man's face, and decided to swallow his question instead. The shorter one walked ahead, scanning the hallway signs like he was checking coordinates, not directions. Fluorescent light flattened the color out of everything. The men brought the outside in wet shoulders, the faint smell of exhaust droplets spattering the polished tile behind them. The charge nurse at the triage station looked up from her monitors. "Can I help you?" she asked, already annoyed. Strangers in suits usually meant paperwork, not patients. The taller man stepped closer and flipped open a leather wallet. She caught the edge of a seal, a photo, a block of text she did not have time to process. His hand was steady, knuckles pale against the dark leather. "Special Agent Carter," he said. His voice was low but carried. "We're looking for a surgeon. She works here." The nurse flicked her eyes to the board, listing the on-call attendings. "You have a name." He hesitated a fraction of a second. "Codename Razor." The nurse blinked. The triage monitors kept beeping behind her, a syncopated background of normal crises, heart rates, oxygen saturations, the metronome of the night shift. "We don't have anyone by that name," she said. "If you have a patient, registration is right there." Carter did not look back at the desk. His partner shifted his weight, scanning the hallways, counting doors. "You have an ER attending named Patel, a trauma attending named Markham, 3 surgical residents on call, and a chief of surgery named Henry Lowell," Carter said. "We read the roster on the way in. We aren't looking for them." The nurse felt the tiny muscles in her neck tighten. He should not have that list. Not like that. Not memorized. "I'm going to need you to slow down," she said. "This is a hospital. You cannot just walk in and—" He leaned in just close enough that she could smell the damp wool of his suit. "Ma'am, we are not here to cause problems. There is a critically injured federal asset en route to your facility. He is alive because of timing and luck. He stays alive because of a surgeon you have on staff. Codename Razor." The second man finally spoke, his voice lighter, edged with tension he was trying to hide. "We were told she would be in the building tonight," he said. "If she is not, we need to know immediately so we can divert." The nurse glanced over their shoulders toward the glass doors. No ambulance lights yet, just the reflected pulse of the city beyond the parking lot, red and blue in the wet pavement. She straightened up. "All my surgeons have real names," she said. "If you want one, you give me one." The two men traded a look. It was brief, but it said more than either of them had so far. There was history in that glance and urgency, and the quiet calculation of people who had long ago stopped believing in coincidences. Carter exhaled once through his nose as if conceding a point in a game he did not have time to play. 5 years ago, he said, our people worked with a surgical team in Helmand Province. Forward operating bases, dirt floors, no supplies. They called their surgeon Razor because she cut fast and clean and did not miss. 2 years ago, a surgeon with the same technique, same suturing style, same outcomes, shows up in a civilian trauma center in Maryland with an incomplete work history and blacked out references. He lowered his voice. "She works here. You may know her by a different name. We do not." The nurse felt a chill creep up beneath her scrubs, as if someone had opened an invisible window. She knew the residents well, knew their habits, their coffee orders, their breakdown schedules. She could not imagine any of them with a code name. "Slow down," she said again, more to herself than to him. "You should talk to Dr. Lowell, chief of surgery. You do not come into my ED and fish for people." Carter nodded once. "Where is he?" "Home, hopefully," she said. "It's 3 a.m. "Page him," he said. "Tell him federal agents are here and a critical case is inbound. Tell him someone he knows as a first year is about to become very important." The nurse stared at him for another second. The monitors behind her chimed in with a low alarm as one patient's oxygen dipped. A respiratory therapist hurried past, pushing a cart, shoes squeaking on the wet floor. She picked up the phone and punched in Lowell's pager number anyway. Not because she liked being told what to do, but because the way the taller man had said critical case did something to the base of her spine she recognized. It was the same feeling that hit her when the radio called a multi-car pileup or a school bus rollover. She hung up and met Carter's eyes again. "You can wait over there," she said, nodding toward a cluster of plastic chairs outside Trauma 2. "Do not step into a treatment bay without permission. Do not talk to staff unless they talk to you first. Do not slow anyone down. We are here to prevent that," Carter said. He followed the line of her nod. His partner walked beside him, shoes leaving damp prints that disappeared almost as soon as they formed. They moved with a contained energy, like sprinters before the gun. As they passed Trauma 4, an empty bay waiting for a patient, the overhead monitor displayed a flat blue line and a steady beep. The nurse on duty glanced up, checking the leads by reflex, even though no one was hooked in yet. The younger agent's gaze flicked to the monitor, then to the open doorway. For a heartbeat, he looked like he was imagining someone there, a man on a gurney, lines in his arms, tubes in his chest. The empty hooks, the coiled tubing, the neat row of packaged instruments caught the light like teeth. "You really think she is here?" he murmured. He kept his voice low, meant only for Carter. Carter sat down in the plastic chair without answering. He rested his elbows on his knees, clasped his hands together, and stared at the corridor ahead. "She left the field 3 years ago," he said. "If she wanted to disappear, she should have chosen somewhere quieter than a level 1 trauma center." He looked up at the clock on the wall, 3:05 a.m. Besides, he added almost to himself, people like that do not disappear. They just change uniforms. Far down the hall, the automatic doors to the ambulance bay slid open, for no one triggered by a gust of wind and the sensor's blind logic. The damp air rolled in, carrying the faint echo of sirens getting closer. The doors closed again on an empty threshold. On the other side of the hospital, beyond a set of double doors and 3 turns of corridor, a scrub sink hummed quietly in the dark stainless steel basin, empty the motion sensor, waiting for a pair of hands. 14 hours earlier, that scrub sink was anything but empty. Water hissed into the basin in a clear, steady sheet, splashing against stainless steel and bare forearms. The smell of antiseptic soap filled the air, sharp and medicinal, clinging to the back of the throat. Dr. Maya Rios watched the foam slide off her hands and vanish down the drain. To her left, Dr. Henry Lowell scrubbed and measured circles, cataloging her in the reflection above the sink. He was in his 50s, square shoulders, thinning hair, the kind of posture that came from years of being the final word in a room. He did not look at her directly when he spoke. "Left sleeve," he said, "all the way up." Maya kept her eyes on her own hands. Fingertips, knuckles, wrists. She pretended she had not heard him for 1 heartbeat longer than she should have. Water ran. The overhead lights hummed. "Dr. Rios," he said slightly louder, "roll up your left sleeve properly." She exhaled through her nose and peeled the cuff of her scrub top higher. Fabric dragged over skin until the scar appeared in the mirror, a line of pale raised tissue starting at the inside of her wrist and cutting up toward her elbow. Straight, clean, precise. Lowell's gaze caught on it. His eyes did not widen, but something in his jaw tightened. "What did that?" he asked. "Glass," Maya said. "Undergrad. Accident." He scraped the nails of one hand across the palm of the other, rinsed, and only then gave her a slanted look in the mirror. "Broken glass does not cut like a scalpel," he said. "At least not in my experience." She shrugged. Small movement. Shoulders barely lifted. "I tried to catch it," she said. Foam slid over the scar and turned it briefly slick and shining. Her fingers never paused in the scrubbing pattern. Under running water, the scar looked almost new. Lowell rinsed, holding his hands up, so water dripped from his elbows. "You listed your age as 29 on your application," he said. "Personnel records put your date of birth at 34 years ago." Maya kept her face neutral. "I must have clicked the wrong box," she said. "That is a very specific box to click," he replied. He reached for a sterile towel from the dispenser. The motion was efficient, practiced. The same for decades. Dry patful, discard. He took his time. "Top of your class at Colorado," he said. "Then 6 years of what you describe as humanitarian work in conflict zones. No organizations listed, no supervisors who pick up the phone, no peer-reviewed publications, just a blank stretch where most people put bullet points." Maya closed the water with her elbow, took her own towel. "Some clinics did not have Wi-Fi," she said lightly. "Hard to upload abstracts when you are trying to keep people from bleeding out on dirt floors." He turned, then really turned and faced her. The tiled wall behind him gleamed sterile and cold. "You are very glib for a first year," he said. "I am very tired," she answered. "There is a difference." The door to the operating room opened a few inches. A circulating nurse stuck her head in. "Gallbladder case is ready," she said. "Patient is under, or 3. Lowell nodded and pulled a disposable cap over his hair. The elastic snapped softly. "Dr. Patel will observe," he said. "I will take the lead." He started toward the door. Maya dried the last of the water from her hands and dropped the towel in the bin. "You assigned me primary," she said. He stopped, looked over his shoulder. "Did I?" he asked. "You signed the schedule," she said. "Procedure laparoscopic cholecystectomy, attending Lowell. Primary surgeon Rios, observer Patel." Her tone stayed even. Not challenging, not deferential, just stating facts. He held her gaze for a moment longer than was comfortable. Then he pushed the door open with his shoulder and stepped through. "Let us see," he said, "if you live up to your resume." The operating room was cool and bright. Light from the overhead panels washed everything in a blue-white glow. Machines hummed, monitors blinked green and yellow. Drapes covered most of the patient on the table, leaving only the rounded curve of the abdomen, exposed skin scrubbed orange. Dr. Anika Patel, third-year resident, stood by the instrument table, gloved and gowned, eyes curious above her mask. "I heard you were observing," she said as Maya entered. "Plans changed," Maya replied. She moved to the patient's right side, feet finding the exact spots worn into the floor by countless surgeons before her. She scanned the instrument tray once. Trocar, camera, scope, clips, suction. The map of the procedure lined up in her mind on reflex. "Ready, Dr. Rios?" the anesthesiologist asked. His voice came from behind the screen, at the patient's head. "Ready," she said. Her hands did not tremble when the scrub nurse placed the scalpel in her palm. The handle settled into her grip like something that had been there 1,000 times. She made the first incision at the umbilicus, just enough pressure to part skin, not enough to nick deeper layers. The smell of cautery came a moment later, faintly metallic like hot coins. Lowell watched from across the table, arms folded. He did not intervene. Not yet. Maya moved through the steps with a measured rhythm. Trocar in, scope inserted. The monitor came alive with an image of the peritoneal cavity, glinting surfaces, soft shadows, the pale bulge of the gallbladder tucked under the liver. "Retraction," she said. Patel complied, adjusting the camera angle. Maya navigated the instruments with the kind of economy that made everything look easy. No wasted movements, no hesitation at junctions where most interns paused. "Clip," she said. Silver flashed on the screen as the cystic duct and artery were secured. "Suction left side," she added. "There is more fluid than the ultrasound showed." The nurse moved the suction tip into place. Fluid cleared exactly where Maya predicted. Patel's eyebrows lifted just above the edge of her mask. Lowell glanced at the wall clock. 17 minutes into the case, they were already past where some residents started to sweat. "Slow down, Dr. Rios," he said mildly. "Speed is not a virtue in itself." "Vitals are stable," she answered. "Bleeding is minimal. I am not rushing. I am working." He did not like the answer, but he had nothing to correct. The whir of the insufflator filled the brief silence. Carbon dioxide kept the abdomen inflated, creating space where there should not be any. The camera slid closer to the gallbladder as Maya dissected it from the liver bed. Her shoulders were relaxed elbows close to her body. Her hands were the only parts of her that really moved. Then as she swept the suction tip along the peritoneal surface, she paused. Her head tilted slightly. It was not dramatic, barely more than a shift in angle, but it was noticeable. She inhaled once through her mask. "Do you smell that?" she asked. Patel sniffed. All she caught was the stew of the OR. Betadine, cautery, plastic. "Smell what?" Patel asked. "The tissue," Maya said. "Something is off." On the monitor, the peritoneum near the gallbladder had a faint, dull sheen, different from the surrounding tissue. A subtle yellowing, a thickness that did not match the textbook picture. Lowell peered at the screen. "Inflammation," he said. "We see that all the time in cholecystitis." Maya adjusted the camera, bringing the area closer, changing the angle, chasing a hunch. "It is not just inflammation," she said quietly. "It looks like the very early edge of peritonitis. I want a repeat white count and a full sepsis panel. And after we close a CT to look for Crohn's disease or microperfs." Patel glanced at Lowell. This was not how a first year was supposed to talk. Lowell's voice cooled. "You do not order workups without consulting the attending," he said, "especially not in the middle of a routine case." "If I am right and we do not catch it now, this will not stay routine," Maya said. "You are a first year," he said. "Stay within what you know." Her hands went completely still for exactly 2 seconds. Long enough for everyone in the room to notice. The monitor showed the motionless view of the gallbladder, the surgical field frozen in place. Then she resumed. She finished the dissection, removed the gallbladder, inspected the area for bleeding. No leaks, no loose clips, everything clean. Clips gleamed in the scope's light in neat parallel lines. "Closing," she said. She withdrew the instruments and began suturing the port sites. Her technique was not what Patel had been taught in residency orientation. The stitches were individual, evenly spaced, each knot snug, without strangling the tissue. It was a style Patel had seen once before on a training model her father had used when he taught field surgery at Fort Bragg. Military stitches, he had called them. Fast to place, strong under stress. Now she watched those same knots form on a civilian patient in Baltimore. Lowell checked the clock again as he stripped off his gloves. 41 minutes from incision to final stitch. Well under the average. He looked at the monitor at the closed port sites at Maya's steady hands. "Fast work, Dr. Rios," he said. "That is not the same as good work. We will see what the labs say." Maya did not answer. She peeled off her gloves and dropped them into the bin. Her fingers were slightly reddened from scrubbing the scar on her left forearm, standing out whitish and firm. "Case complete," the anesthesiologist said. "Vitals still rock solid." Maya stepped back from the table. For a brief moment, she placed one hand on the drape near the patient's shoulder, a gesture so quick it was almost nothing. Then she turned and walked out toward the scrub room, leaving Lowell and Patel to sign the operative note. Patel watched her go, then looked back at the sutures, the pattern of them, the speed. She felt an odd tug of recognition she could not place yet. 2 hours after the gallbladder case, the hospital had settled into its late afternoon drone. Monitors chimed, pagers buzzed, the coffee in the resident lounge tasted burned and old. In the lab, a printer spat out a fresh sheet of paper. Dr. Jordan Kim grabbed it on her way past, not expecting much. The gallbladder patient from OR3 was supposed to be routine. Check the boxes, sign the form, move on. Her eyes ran down the column. White count elevated. C-reactive protein up. Lactate edging past normal. The note at the bottom mentioned atypical bowel thickening on a quick post-op scan. Her steps slowed. She flipped back to the top of the sheet, then to the CT image attached behind it. A thin black line along the bowel, subtle, almost apologetic. Microperforation, Crohn's disease hiding behind a gallbladder. Jordan stopped in the hallway. Someone had written a short, handwritten line in the margin. It was the tech. She liked the one with neat printing. She recognized his careful block letters. Surgeon suspected peritonitis intra-op, ordered sepsis panel. Jordan stared at that sentence for a moment. She turned and walked faster now toward the surgical offices. The door to Lowell's office was half open. He sat behind his desk, glasses low on his nose, a stack of charts in front of him, as precise as everything else in the room. Diplomas covered the wall behind him in straight lines. "Do you have a second?" Jordan asked, already stepping inside. "If this is about the resident's schedule, no," he said, without looking up. "If this is about a patient, possibly." She placed the lab results on his desk right on top of his stack. "It is about the gallbladder from this morning," she said. He adjusted his glasses and read. His eyes moved more slowly than hers had. When he finished the first page, he flipped to the CT. Lines deepened between his eyebrows as he took in the findings. "She called it," Jordan said quietly. "During the case, she smelled something and said the peritoneum looked wrong, asked for the labs and the scan." He read the margin note. The pen lifted slightly in his hand, as if he might cross it out, then settled again. "Anyone can be right once," he said. "That was not guessing," Henry Jordan replied. "That was experience." He looked up at her, annoyed at the use of his first name in his office, but he did not correct her. "She is 29, he said. "Her paperwork says 29, Jordan said. "Her hands look older." He set the pages aside in a neat pile. "Let us not assign mythology to intuition," he said. "She did her job. We will monitor the patient, adjust treatment. Log the data. You are on rounds in the morning, yes?" "Yes," Jordan said. "Good," he replied. "You can observe whether Dr. Rios remains as miraculous when the pressure is not in an operating room." She opened her mouth to say more, then closed it. Pushing him now would not help Maya. Whatever this was, it had to unfold at its own pace. In the resident's locker room, the air was thick with the smell of disinfectant and sweat masked badly by cheap body spray. 3 surgical residents crowded around a metal bench, half dressed in scrubs, half in street clothes, trading the kind of gossip that passed for decompression. 41 minutes, one of them said. "Skin to skin." "That is not human," another replied. "My fastest lap chole is 78. "She has been binging videos," the first said. "Some simulation software. You can practice technique over and over now." A third resident, older with a scar of his own along his jawline, shook his head. "You do not get hands like that from simulation," he said. I watched from the gallery. She never paused. Not once. Not even when Lowell pushed her on the labs. "So what is your theory?" the first asked. "Secret private practice before residency, underground surgery club." "Combat medicine," the third said simply. The other 2 laughed, then stopped when they saw he was not joking. "In my first year of med school, we had a trauma surgeon talk about field hospitals in Iraq," he continued. The way he described the tempo, the way his hands moved when he showed us suturing, it looked exactly like hers. Efficient, like every motion had been paid for in advance. The locker room door swung open before they could answer. Maya stepped in a backpack slung over one shoulder, hair damp from a quick shower. Conversation thinned, then shifted to something else as she crossed to her locker. Not everyone was subtle. She could feel eyes on the scar when she rolled her sleeve to grab a badge clipped inside. Her phone buzzed once in her pocket. She ignored it, spun the combination, opened the locker. The phone buzzed again, shorter this time, then a third time in quick succession. Maya slipped it out and angled the screen toward her body. No name appeared, only a sterile string of numbers and a single line of text. "Situation fluid, stay available." She deleted it without saving thumb moving automatically. The message vanished. The phone looked ordinary again. Behind her, one of the residents lowered his voice. "She does not even have Instagram," he whispered. "Who under 30 does not have Instagram?" Maya shut the locker with a soft metallic click and headed out. The night passed in the way hospital nights did. Admissions and discharges, pain consults, family meetings. Residents catnapped in 20-minute bursts when they could. Nurses kept the place from falling apart. Morning brought the flat gray of Baltimore through the windows and the thin light of fluorescent bulbs that had never gone off. By 7, the surgical team was clustered at the foot of a bed on the 6th floor. Mr. Callahan, the gallbladder patient, sat propped against his pillows with a plastic tray in front of him. Half his toast was gone. Someone had found him decent black tea. He looked better than anyone had expected of someone whose body had been quietly sabotaging him from the inside. So I had more than a bad gallbladder, he said, looking from face to face. That is one way to put it, Jordan said. Lowell stood at the end of the bed, white coat, crisp stethoscope in place. Residents fanned out behind him, Maya near the back, in standard first-year position. She held the chart in front of her like a shield. You had inflammation beyond what we initially saw, Lowell said. Early infection. Our surgeon recognized subtle changes in the tissue and ordered additional tests. That allowed us to start treatment before things progressed. Callahan's gaze moved past the attending, picked out Maya among the cluster. Her, he said, pointing with his plastic fork. She was the one who did my surgery, right? All eyes turned to her. Maya lifted her head, met the patient's look, and gave a small nod. Yes, sir, she said. Gallbladder came out cleanly. The inflammation suggested something else was going on. We caught it early. You saved me from... What did you call it? He asked Jordan. Crohn disease. We diagnosed Crohn, Jordan said. We can treat it. You came in for one problem and went home with 2 answers. Callahan looked back at Maya. Well, thank you, he said. My sister is a nurse. She says peritonitis is a bad way to go. It is not recommended, Maya said. A faint ripple of amusement traveled through the group. Even Lowell's mouth twitched. They moved on to the next patient, then the next. The routine of rounds smoothed over the odd edges, blood pressures, incision checks, questions about pain, bowel function, diet. Maya answered when addressed, otherwise listened. In the hallway between rooms, Lowell slowed his pace until he was beside her. Nice catch yesterday, he said, without looking at her. It was not a catch, she replied. It was pattern recognition. That sounds like a catch with better branding, he said. She did not rise to it. I have seen that pattern before, she said. More than once. He studied her for a beat, then resumed walking. Luck, he said. Do not build a reputation on it. She held her tongue. There were so many things she could have said. About what it cost to recognize patterns of decay in human tissue, about how many times she had watched the same signs arrive too late in places that did not have CT scanners or lab techs. Silence was safer. They reached the conference room at the far end of the ward. The sign on the door read, Surgery Morning Brief. Inside, a long table took up most of the space. Residents lined the walls when chairs ran out. A projector hummed as Lowell clicked through the day's schedule on the screen. Cases stacked from morning to night, hip replacement, emergency bowel resection, a valve repair, 2 scheduled laparoscopic cases. We will likely pick up 2 or 3 emergencies on top of this, he said. Trauma numbers have been up all week. He assigned cases, his finger moving down the list. Kim, you are on the valve with Dr. Hassan. Patel, take the bowel resection with me. Walker, the hip with Dr. Singh. He paused at one name, tapping the screen gently. Rios, he said, letting the last name hang for a second. Heads turned in her direction. Yes, sir, she said. You will observe from the gallery today, he said. No primary responsibility, no scrub-in unless requested. There was a subtle stir. It was unusual to sideline a resident who had just performed a clean case. Maya did not flinch. Understood, she said. Jordan leaned closer under the murmur of shuffling papers. That is punishment, she whispered, for being right in front of him. That is hierarchy, Maya replied. When the briefing ended, people filed out, scattering toward locker rooms and elevators. Lowell remained by the table, collecting his notes into a tidy pile. As Maya reached the door, his voice cut through the low conversation. Dr. Rios. She stopped. My office, he said. 5 minutes. He did not say why. He did not have to. She nodded once and stepped into the hall. A nurse pushing a med cart squeezed past her, the wheels rattling against a bump in the floor. Somewhere below, a distant siren began to rise in pitch, weaving through the soundscape of the waking hospital. Lowell's office sat at the far end of the administrative corridor, quieter than the rest of the floor. The carpet muted footsteps. The walls were painted a color someone had probably called calming in a brochure. Maya arrived in 4 minutes, not 5. The door was open halfway. She knocked once against the frame. Come in, Lowell said. The room looked exactly as she remembered from orientation. Diplomas on one wall in neat rows. Shelves of journals and textbooks, spine-out color coded by specialty. The window behind his desk showed a slice of Baltimore sky and the tops of brick buildings beyond. He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. Sit, he said. She remained standing. I am fine here, she said. He let that pass with only a slight tightening around his eyes. He folded his hands on the desk, fingers laced. I have been reviewing your file, he said. She did not look at the folder. She had curated those pages herself. Cleaned edges, minimal detail. Yes, sir, she said. You understand I'm responsible for every surgeon who touches a patient in this hospital, he said. If something goes wrong, it is my name on the report, my license, my reputation. Yes, she said again. You are very good, he said. Better than any first year I have seen in 30 years. Your hands move like someone who has done far more than you admit to on paper. He flipped the folder open. University of Colorado School of Medicine, he read. Graduated at the top of your class. Impressive recommendations. Then 6 years working for various NGOs in conflict zones in Central and Eastern Europe. No specific organizations named. No addresses. No supervisors who can be reached for verification. He slid one of the letters out and held it up. I sent emails, he said. I made calls. Most bounced back. Some did not. The ones that did go through reached inboxes that did not respond. He set the paper down. That is unusual, he said. Some clinics were not eager to be on anyone's radar, Maya said. We treated people who did not always want it known they had been treated. That is not an answer, he said. It is the answer I have, she replied. He removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. When he put them back on, his eyes were sharp again. Where did you really train, Dr. Rios, he asked. After medical school. Before here. I told you, she said. Colorado, then remote work. Remote where he pressed. War zones, borders, classified locations. Medical teams do not simply appear without supply chains, without funding, without oversight. She watched him for a moment, standing perfectly still in the middle of his organized space. Why does it matter where I learn to stop bleeding? She asked quietly. Is the skill different if the roof over my head is concrete and not tin? It matters because people who learn medicine in war zones are sometimes asked to do things that have very little to do with medicine, he said. And I do not want that mindset wandering around my operating rooms without my knowledge. They held each other's gaze. The office felt smaller. His phone rang. The desk phone, not his cell. The sound cut through the tension, a high, insistent trill. He ignored it. It matters, he said again, as if the ringing were just another monitor alarm to be tuned out. Because if you have been performing unsupervised procedures in the field, I need to know before I assign you to anything beyond a gallbladder. The phone stopped, a breath of silence. Then it started up again, shorter intervals now. Maya's eyes flicked to the digital clock above his door, 11:46. Outside the window, traffic thickened on the street as lunch hours ended. You should answer that, she said. This is my office, he said. I will decide which interruptions deserve my time. When administration calls you twice during morning rounds, it is not about forms, she said. If the ER is already backed up and they are paging the chief of surgery, something is coming. He frowned. How would you know that, he asked. She tilted her head slightly, listening to something beyond the walls. Distant sirens had started to weave through the city noise, faint but increasing. Because patterns repeat, she said. In hospitals. In war. Phones ring in clusters when bad things line up. The phone shrilled again. He stared at her for a second, then snatched up the receiver. Lowell, he said. Maya watched the color shift in his face as he listened. Pink to gray, to something tight around the mouth. How many, he asked. He listened longer, his free hand flattened on the desk. Understood, he said. Activate the disaster protocol. All surgical teams to the emergency department. Start diverting non-critical. I will be right there. He hung up and looked at her. Overpass collapse on the interstate, he said. Multi-vehicle pileup. They are estimating 40 to 50 casualties incoming. Some already en route. Some trapped. He pushed his chair back and stood. We do this regularly, he asked half to himself. Yes, she said. You do? He grabbed his coat from the back of the chair without putting it on. You will observe in Trauma 3, he said. You keep your hands to yourself unless directly told otherwise. I have enough variables to manage without a wild card in the mix. With respect, you are going to need every pair of hands you can get, she said. I need experienced surgeons, he said. Not first years who think a clean gallbladder makes them invincible. Her jaw clenched, but she stepped aside as he came around the desk. The overhead speakers crackled as they left the office. Code Orange, the intercom voice announced. Mass casualty incident. All available trauma, surgical, and critical care staff report to the emergency department. Repeat, Code Orange. This is not a drill. The hallway changed in an instant. Nurses who had been walking suddenly moved at a clipped, almost jogging pace. Residents broke into sprints. A janitor pressed himself against the wall, mop and bucket in hand, as a gurney flew past empty toward the elevators. Lowell started toward the bank of stairs. Maya fell into step a pace behind him. You observe, he said again over the rising noise. Trauma 3, that is all. Understood, she said. They hit the stairwell. The air was cooler there, smelling faintly of concrete and cleaning solution. Footsteps echoed as other staff poured in from above and below, white coats flaring briefly with each turn. At the bottom, the doors to the emergency department pushed open like a pressure valve. The ER had transformed. Gurneys lined the hallways in neat rows, each with a cart of supplies parked at the foot. Trauma bays stood open, lights blazing. Nurses checked and rechecked ventilators, suction canisters, crash carts. Someone was taping triage tags to the end of each bed. The sound was a layered roar. Voices calling out vitals, the hum of machines, the distant wail of approaching ambulances now clear and loud. The charge nurse from the night shift was still at the desk, but a second workstation had been pulled in beside her. A red folder labeled Disaster Plan lay open between them. Lowell stepped up to the desk. "What is our current status?" he asked. "First wave from the overpass is 3 minutes out," she said. "EMS reports multiple entrapments. We have 3 trauma bays, staffed and ready, 4 more nearly there. ICU has 2 beds they can open and a third if they push." She handed him a stack of printouts. "List of available ORs," she said. "Anesthesiology has 2 attendings in-house, 1 on the way in. Blood bank is spinning up all O negative and cross-matching every sample they have." Lowell scanned the pages. "Assign Trauma 1 to criticals from the first ambulance," he said. "Trauma 2, chest and head. Trauma 3, abdominal and pelvic. I will start in Trauma 1. He turned to Maya. "You go to 3, he said. "You stand against the wall. You watch. You do not touch anything unless a senior resident places your hand somewhere." "I hear you," she said. He started toward Trauma 1. She moved toward Trauma 3. Inside, 2 nurses were already setting up. One checked the laryngoscope bulbs. The other snapped open IV kits and lined them on a tray. The monitor over the bed blinked a green rhythm on an empty baseline waiting. A respiratory therapist rolled in a ventilator. She nodded at Maya without stopping. "Observer?" she asked. "Apparently," Maya said. The therapist gave a half smile that did not reach her eyes. "You picked a hell of a day to learn," she said. Maya stepped into the corner out of the path to the bed. From there she could see the door, the monitor, the instrument table. Her hands rested lightly at her sides. Down the corridor, the alarm on the ambulance bay doors sounded once, a double beep. Then she heard it through the walls and steel and glass. The first siren cut out as a rig swung into the bay. The sound dropped from a howl to the grind of brakes and shouted voices. "Incoming," someone called. Maya let her eyes close for a brief controlled breath. The smell in the ER was different now. Less antiseptic, more metal, a faint undertone of gasoline. She opened her eyes as the doors to the trauma area flew wide and the first gurney burst through. The first gurney went to Trauma 1, pushed by paramedics with dried blood on their sleeves. A second followed, then a third each, with a trail of shouted numbers behind it. Male 20s, GCS 8 blunt head trauma. Female 50s, chest pain, possible cardiac contusion. Unknown male pulseless at scene got him back en route. The emergency department swallowed them doors, bumping curtains, snapping open and shut. The noise rose layered and chaotic, yet somehow organized. People moved in arcs that avoided collisions by instinct. Trauma 3, a paramedic called from the hallway. 35-year-old male restrained driver, lateral impact. Left flank, pain hypotensive, on scene, improved with fluids. "Bring him in," a nurse answered. Maya straightened in her corner as they swung the gurney through the doorway. The man on the stretcher was tall, broad-shouldered, collarbone tattoo visible where his shirt had been cut away. Dirt streaked his hair. A shallow abrasion crossed his cheekbone. His left hand was clamped over his side, just below the ribs. His eyes were open. They moved immediately, tracking the room as if assessing a battlefield. "Sir, can you tell me your name?" the nurse asked. "Cole Walker," he said. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "Staff Sergeant. Marines." He winced as the gurney bumped against the bed. "On 3, the nurse said. 1, 2, 3. They slid him over. The mattress hissed as his weight settled. The monitor leads found his chest in practiced hands. Blood pressure cuff squeezed his arm. The pulse oximeter clipped to his finger blinked to life. "BP 98 over 60, the nurse called. Heart rate 110. Saturation 94 on 15 liters. Senior resident Dr. Vargas swept into the room, snapping on gloves as he crossed to the bedside. He was in his 4th year, competent, capable, the kind of doctor who did not flinch when things got messy. "What have we got?" he asked. The paramedic answered, rattling off the details. Side impact on the driver's side. Seatbelt in place. No loss of consciousness reported at scene. Complaints of left-sided abdominal pain. Hypotension treated with fluids. "Any obvious deformities?" Vargas asked. "Negative," the paramedic said. "Tender over left lower ribs. No open wounds." "Sir, I am Dr. Vargas," he said to the patient. "We are going to figure out what is going on with that pain. Any trouble breathing?" "Bruises," Walker said. "Ribs kind of suck. Breathing is fine." He tried to smile, then hissed as the movement tugged at his side. "Okay." "That is enough, Charming," Vargas said. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is the pain in your side?" 7, Walker said. "When you people keep poking at 11. "Please do not make me like you," the nurse muttered as she started a second IV. Maya stayed in her spot against the wall. From there she could see the monitor pinging out vital signs. She watched the numbers like they were another set of lab values. BP 96/62, heart rate 112. Not terrible, not great. The kind of numbers you could misread as stable if you wanted to be optimistic. Vargas palpated Walker's abdomen, starting on the right side and moving left. Any pain here, he asked. Not really, Walker said. When Vargas pressed over the left upper quadrant, Walker's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Yeah, he said through clenched teeth. There. Guarding Vargas said, rebound. He lifted his hand. Walker flinched again. Little bit, Walker admitted. Could be muscle contusion, Vargas said to the nurse. Rib fractures, get a chest x-ray and a CT abdomen pelvis with contrast. Let radiology know we are worried about spleen, but I do not want to call it yet. Maya's gaze slid back to the monitor. BP 92/58, heart rate 118. The digits glowed in the dim light of the trauma bay. She watched Walker's breathing. Slightly faster than a moment ago. Not dramatic, just enough. His left hand, the one that was not tied to machines, kept drifting back toward his side, fingers pressing just under the rib margin, as if trying to hold something in place. Dr. Vargas, Maya said, keeping her voice level. His pattern fits splenic injury. Delayed rupture is common with this mechanism. I think his spleen is bleeding. Vargas did not look up from the orders he was entering into the computer. Thank you, Dr. Rios, he said. We will confirm with imaging. You may not have time, she said. He stopped typing and glanced at her. I have a full trauma protocol to follow, he said. We are not slicing anyone open in the ER because an intern has a feeling. It is not a feeling, she said. He is tachycardic and drifting down on pressure despite fluids. Pain is localized to the left upper quadrant. The impact was lateral. His hand keeps guarding the same spot. His skin tone is changing. Vargas looked at Walker. The color in the man's face had faded slightly, though the overhead lights made it hard to tell whether that was real or just hospital pallor. This is not a classroom, Rios, Vargas said. You are here to observe. Let us do our job. The nurse at the head of the bed cut Maya a quick side glance, and then returned her attention to Walker's airway. You feeling okay, Sergeant? She asked. Little lightheaded, he admitted. Nothing I have not felt on a 10-mile ruck. Maya's eyes went back to the monitor. BP 88/54, heart rate 124. She swallowed. Can we at least get a fast exam now, she asked. Quick ultrasound? We can see if there is free fluid before he leaves the room. Vargas exhaled long and annoyed. Fine, he said. You want a fast, we will do a fast. Rios, you can wheel in the machine since you are so eager. The ultrasound machine was parked just outside the bay. Maya rolled it in, plugged it in with fingers that moved faster than they looked. She handed Vargas the probe gel already squeezed onto it. He pressed it to Walker's abdomen. The screen filled with shades of gray. Subxiphoid view, he said. Looks okay, no obvious fluid. He moved to the right upper quadrant. Liver, kidney, no obvious black pools. Left upper quadrant. The image flickered, then settled. Maya stepped closer despite herself. At the edge of the spleen, a dark crescent appeared. It was not large, but it was there. Come on, she said softly. Vargas adjusted the angle. There, Maya said, pointing. That is free fluid. He did not answer immediately. Could be a cyst, he said. It is not a cyst, she said. Walker shifted on the bed, face tightening. Getting kind of dizzy over here, he said. The monitor beeped louder as if agreeing. BP 82/50, heart rate 130. The nurse at the head of the bed raised her voice. Pressure dropping, she said. He is getting cool and clammy. Hang more fluids, Vargas said on it. That should be automatically. Fluids are not going to fix this, Maya said. He is bleeding into his abdomen. Every liter we pour in is just more blood he will lose. He needs a laparotomy now. The OR is ready, Vargas said. We will take him up as soon as transport is available. Maya shook her head. He will not make it to the OR, she said. By the time we get an elevator handoff prep and open, he will crash in the hallway. We can open him here. We have suction lights, instruments, blood. It is not ideal, but it is survivable. Vargas stared at her. For a moment, the only sounds were the beeping monitor and the hiss of oxygen. If I let you cut him open in this room and you are wrong, he said slowly, you end his career and I end mine. If you do nothing, she replied. We both stand here and watch him die politely. The nurse at the head of the bed spoke again, firmer. BP 78/46, she said. He is tanking. Walker's eyes had gone glassy. His breathing was shallow. Sergeant, stay with us, she said. He tried to nod. The motion was sluggish. Vargas looked at the monitor, then at Maya, then back at the man on the table. Get me 4 units of O negative, he said. Activate the massive transfusion protocol. Notify blood bank we may need more. He turned to Maya. If we do this, I'm assisting, he said. If you falter, I take over. Do you understand? Yes, she said. He pulled a gown off the rack, thrust his arms into the sleeves. Someone paged Dr. Lowell, he added. Tell him Trauma 3 is proceeding with emergency laparotomy for suspected splenic rupture in the bay. The nurse slapped a scalpel onto the instrument tray with more force than necessary. Another nurse poured betadine onto gauze and swabbed Walker's abdomen in wide, hurried circles. Maya stepped to the right side of the bed, where she had stood that morning. The context was different. The stakes were not. "Sergeant Walker," she said quietly, leaning close to his ear. "We are going to make an incision down the middle of your abdomen to stop the bleeding. You will be asleep for the worst of it." He managed to focus on her for one brief second. "You sound like you have done this before," he whispered. She did not answer. The anesthesiologist pushed medication into the IV. Walker's eyelids fluttered, then closed. Maya looked at the nurse. "Are we ready?" she asked. "Monitors on. Blood on the way. We are as ready as we are going to get," the nurse said. Maya took the scalpel. The skin parted under the blade in a straight, deliberate line from just below the sternum to below the navel. Blood welled up along the cut. Not arterial spurts, but more than she liked. "Suction," she said. The tip snaked into the wound. The field cleared. She cut through fascia, then peritoneum. Warm air from the room washed over the open cavity. The smell of blood grew stronger, copper and salt. Dark, partially clotted blood pooled in the left upper quadrant. "Positive," Vargas said under his breath. "Spleen," Maya said. "We need to control inflow." Her hands went in fingers gliding along familiar planes. She found the splenic artery by feel, clamped it. The monitor responded, the frantic beeping easing by a fraction as the flood slowed. "Pack the left side," she said. "I want sponges in all 4 quadrants. We are going to work top down." Nurses passed laparotomy pads into her waiting hands. She placed them with quick care, creating pockets of visibility in the chaos. The spleen itself was a mess. The surface torn, the capsule shredded in almost a starburst pattern. No repairing that. "Total splenectomy," she said. "There is nothing here worth salvaging." She heard Vargas suck in a breath, but he did not argue. She worked methodically. Clamp, cut, tie. Each vessel isolated, secured. Her motions had a rhythm that ignored the room's urgency and answered only to what lay inside the open abdomen. The first unit of blood arrived. The nurse hung it air-purged from the line in practiced motions. "Transfusion started," she called. Maya did not look up. Her mind narrowed to a tunnel, her hands, the organs, the bleeding. The splenic hilum came free. "Removing spleen," she said. She lifted the ruined organ out. It sagged into the basin the nurse held, heavy and wet. She swept the left upper quadrant with her fingers, feeling for any active bleeds. Small ones she cauterized. Larger she tied off. The monitor numbers climbed slowly. "BP 92/60, the nurse said. "Heart rate 100. "Better," Vargas said quietly. "Not good enough yet," Maya answered. She irrigated the cavity, watched for fresh red that would betray hidden leaks. Nothing major appeared. Only the slow oozing of injured tissues which the body would handle once it had enough volume and time. Satisfied, she began closing. Fascia first, with sturdy, interrupted sutures. Not the prettiest pattern, but the kind that held when trucks bounced over cratered roads. Skin next, each stitch, equidistant tension balanced on either side. The line would scar, but it would not pull. How long, the nurse asked, almost in awe. Vargas glanced at the wall clock. 31 minutes, he said, from incision to final stitch. Maya tied the last knot and cut the suture tail. She stepped back, peeled off her gloves. Her hands were as steady now as they had been at the start. Dried blood streaked her forearms where the gown sleeves had ridden up, stopping just short of the old white scar. Walker lay motionless on the bed chest, rising and falling with mechanical regularity. His skin had more color than before. The monitor beeped a slow, regular rhythm that sounded almost bored. "BP 100/68, the nurse said. "Heart rate 92. "That will do," Vargas said. The door to the trauma bay opened. Lowell stood there, cap on mask hanging loose at his neck. Gown stained with someone else's blood from another bay. He took in the scene in a single sweep. The open suture line, the tray of instruments, the basin holding a destroyed spleen. His eyes went to Maya. "What did you do?" he asked. Vargas answered before she could. "Rios performed an emergency splenectomy for a ruptured spleen," he said. "In the bay, we were losing him." Lowell stepped closer to the bed. He examined the incision, the sutures, the vitals on the monitor. His gaze was clinical, appraising. "Who authorized this?" he asked. Everyone in the room felt the pull of that question. For a second, there was only the sound of the monitor ticking out a life that had nearly stopped. Vargas met his attending's eyes. "His blood pressure did," he said. Staff Sergeant Cole Walker did not wake up all at once. It happened in layers. Sound came first, the muffled hiss of oxygen, the soft beeping of a monitor, the low murmur of voices outside the curtain, then weight, the heaviness in his limbs, the ache that drew a line of fire down the center of his abdomen. He tried to move and felt tape tug at his skin. "Easy," someone said. "You are wired to half the hospital." He opened his eyes. The lights were dimmed in the recovery bay, a curtain on one side, the vague outline of another patient on the other. The ceiling tiles were unfamiliar, not the inside of his car, not the twisted metal and concrete of the overpass. A face leaned into view. Dark hair tucked into a cap, mask off now, eyes steady. Recognition hit him before memory did. "You," he said. The word came out as a rasp. Dr. Maya Rios rested one hand lightly on the rail of his bed. "Me," she said. He squinted at her, trying to line up the present with a fragment of the past. "You were Helmand," he said. "Forward operating base, dust everywhere, generator that kept dying. You were shorter then." "I am the same height," she said. He tried to chuckle and grimaced instead. "You told Staff Sergeant Harper that breathing was optional," he said slowly, "but living was not. Then you shoved a tube in his chest while mortars were hitting the wall." The images came back in jump cuts. The smell of burned plastic, the weight of a body held down on a stretcher, a woman with gloved hands moving faster than seemed possible. "We called you Razor," he said, "because you cut death off people." Maya's fingers tightened on the rail for a fraction of a second. "You lost a lot of blood," she said. "You are probably mixing me up with someone else." He shook his head a little, then stopped when the room rocked. "No," he said. "I remember your hands. Same scar, same stitches." He glanced down at his bandaged abdomen. "Tell me that is not your work." "It is," she said. "So I am not crazy," he said. "Or if I am, you are part of it." His eyes closed briefly and opened again. "What happened?" he asked. "Your spleen decided to explode," she said. "We took it out before it took you with it." She could have said more. About the timing, about the blood that had filled his abdomen, about the clamp on the artery that had made the numbers on the monitor climb again. None of that would change the fact that he was still here. "Spleen is not essential, right?" he asked. "I can still run the PFT. You will need some vaccines," she said, "and you will have a very unfriendly scar." He shifted, testing the pain, the limits. "Scars are fine," he said. "Remind you where you have been." He watched her for a moment. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Not here in this room, in this hospital, in Baltimore." She hesitated. "Because someone has to be," she said. "That is not an answer," he said. "It is the answer I have," she replied. His eyelids drooped. The effort of conversation was catching up to him. "You are still Razor," he murmured. "Whatever name you put on your badge." He drifted off again before she could correct him. Outside his bay, Jordan waited with the tablet in her hands. She had caught enough through the curtain to hear the word Helmand, enough to know that Walker had seen something she had only guessed at. "How is he?" Jordan asked as Maya stepped out. "Stable," Maya said. "We will keep him in the ICU for a day, then step down if he behaves." Jordan nodded, but her eyes were on Maya's face. "He knew you," Jordan said, "from a combat zone, called you Razor." "People say strange things after anesthesia," Maya said. "Sometimes," Jordan said. "Sometimes they say things they do not have filters to hold back." They held each other's gaze. Jordan looked down at the tablet at the post-op note she had pulled up. Emergency splenectomy in trauma bay, time to hemorrhage control. Units transfused? She had seen the pictures afterward, the ruined organ in the basin, the methodical closure. "My father trained field surgeons for 20 years, she said. Fort Bragg. He used to say you can recognize combat hands a mile away. The way they prioritize, the way they move when they stop believing in unlimited time." Maya's expression did not change. "Your father is a smart man," she said. "Too retired to be useful now," Jordan said. "But he was right." She closed the tablet. "Dr. Lowell wants to see you in the morning," she added. "Grand rounds review of the mass casualty response." "Of course he does," Maya said. Rumors spread faster than bacteria in a warm culture. By evening, the story of the splenectomy had already mutated 3 times. In the cafeteria, a nurse swore she had seen Maya cut open 2 patients at once. In radiology, someone insisted the new intern had done a full damage control laparotomy in under 20 minutes. In the residence lounge, the version shifting between mouths, settled on something closer to reality. "She did it in the bay," one resident said, pacing between the couch and the vending machines. "Not even a real OR. Clamp cut, tie done." "That is insane," another said. "That is malpractice waiting to happen." "Except he lived," the first replied, and the attending signed off on the note. A third resident sat with his back against the wall, long legs stretched out listening. "We are not trained for that here," he said. "At least not yet." The lights in the emergency department had been on high all day. By 9 in the evening, the wave from the overpass had broken. The last of the critical patients were in the ICU or the OR. The walking wounded were patch-splinted, given prescriptions, sent home or to short-term beds. The noise level settled into something closer to normal. Phones still rang. Families still argued in low voices. Nurses still moved in the constant loop that kept the place functioning. In the ambulance bay, the rain had stopped. The pavement was damp, reflecting the sodium orange of the streetlights. The charge nurse for the night shift stood at her station, sipping lukewarm coffee, when the first black SUV rolled into view. It did not have lights on the roof, no siren, Just a steady, deliberate glide up to the curb, followed by another behind it and a third. Their windows were dark enough to reflect the bay doors like mirrors. The nurse set her cup down. She knew ambulances, knew how they sounded. This was not that. The sliding doors opened as two men in suits entered. They were different from the pair who would come in the early hours of the morning. These wore darker ties. One carried a thin tablet, the other had an earpiece that caught the light when he turned his head. "Evening," the nurse said, already bracing. "We are closed for tours." "We are not here for a tour," the woman who followed them said. She stepped in from behind the men, rain beating on the shoulders of a charcoal coat. Her hair was a sharp gray that did not match her face, which was younger than the color suggested. Her eyes missed nothing. She flipped open a badge in one smooth motion. "Special Agent Dana Hale," she said. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." The nurse glanced at the badge. The seal was right. The photo was right. Something about the number at the bottom was not. Too many digits. An extra code that did not belong on standard ID. "We have ambulances for a reason," the nurse said, keeping her tone neutral. "If you have a patient, they come through EMS dispatch like everyone else." "They are coming," Hale said. 2 minutes out. They were closer to us than to any government facility when the call came in. "We diverted here." "What kind of patient?" the nurse asked. "Male," Hale said. "Late 20s, 2 gunshot wounds, one to the shoulder, one to the chest, near the heart. He has been unstable since the scene." The nurse's mental checklist lit up. 2 gunshot wounds. Unstable. They got that often enough. The city shot at itself regularly. "We can handle GSWs," she said. "What is the issue?" Hale's gaze did not waver. "He is a high-value federal asset," she said. "He is carrying intelligence about coordinated attacks on U.S. infrastructure, power grids, water treatment facilities, hospitals." The nurse's stomach tightened. "So call your own doctors," she said. "Quantico, Langley, wherever you people go when you break your toys." "There is no time," Hale said. "Our nearest facility with surgical capacity is 40 minutes away by air." "He does not have 40 minutes. You are 8 minutes away. He needs an operating room and a surgeon who knows how to work in a combat environment." "We have trauma surgeons," the nurse said. "We have a chief of surgery who is very territorial." "We read your trauma registry," Hale said. "You do good work, but we are not looking for good. We are looking for specific." 3 years ago, an off-the-books surgical unit in Odessa handled an extraction gone wrong. The techniques used there match what we have observed in 2 cases in this hospital in the last 24 hours. She held the nurse's eyes. "Your chief of surgery has a resident on staff whose background does not line up," she said, "whose hands move like someone with war in their muscle memory. We need her." Before the nurse could answer the double beep of the ambulance bay, alarm sounded. An EMS rig backed into the bay lights, flashing red across the wet concrete. The back doors flew open. 2 paramedics jumped down the gurney between them. "Male 28, one called as they pushed. 2 GSWs, one left shoulder, one left chest, just lateral to the sternum. Hypotensive, tachycardic, barely holding, with fluids and pressors. We have had him on oxygen and started blood." "He coded once," the other added. "Got him back after 1 round of CPR and EPI." Every bump on the road made his pressure dip. They rolled him through the doors. The nurse got her first look. The man on the stretcher was pale beneath the smeared blood. His shirt had been cut away. A pressure bandage covered the shoulder wound, seeping through at the edges. Another heavy dressing sat over his left chest, taped down so firmly the skin around it puckered. His eyes were closed. An oxygen mask fogged with shallow breaths. The monitor strapped to the gurney blinked a narrow strip of his heart rhythm. The numbers in the corner were bad and trending worse. "Where do you want him?" the paramedic asked. The nurse did some quick math. "Trauma 2, she said. "Call respiratory. Get blood bank on the line. Page Dr. Lowell and Dr. Markham. Tell them we have a critical chest, GSW, inbound to the bay." Haley stepped closer, careful not to touch, but near enough that the man's blood-soaked bandage was within reach. "The bullet fragments," she said quietly. "It is a specialty round. Breaks into small metallic pieces on impact. They migrate. If one reaches his heart, this conversation ends." The nurse looked at her. "You said you needed a specific surgeon," the nurse said. "Codename Razor?" Hale nodded once. "We were told she works here under a different name," Hale said. "That she left our world and tried to disappear in yours." The nurse reached for the phone. Her fingers moved without hesitation. She dialed Lowell first. Then as the paramedics wheeled the gurney toward Trauma 2 and the monitors continued their frantic beeping, she paged someone else. The message went out on the hospital system, a text that would buzz a single device on a single hip. "Rios M to ED trauma, stat." The pager at Maya's hip vibrated hard enough to rattle the metal clip. She glanced down. "ED trauma, stat." Her heartbeat picked up even before her feet did. She left the chart she had been reading on the nurse's station and started for the elevator's strides lengthening as the noise from below rose to meet her. By the time she reached the emergency department, the air felt charged, not the frantic chaos of the overpass surge. This was tighter focused, like the moment before a fuse burned into something important. The doors to Trauma 2 were half open. Through the gap, she caught a flash of pale skin, bloody dressings, a mess of lines and wires. The sound of a monitor trying to find a rhythm threaded through the voices inside. In the hall, Dr. Markham, the trauma attending palm pressed to his forehead, stood talking to the charge nurse and a woman in a charcoal coat. Maya had never seen the woman before, but there was something in the way she stood that was familiar, very still, very aware. Like she expected the walls to sprout ears at any moment. Lowell hurried in from the opposite side, coat flaring. He stopped when he saw the woman, when he saw Maya, when he saw the doorway to Trauma 2. "What are we dealing with?" he asked. The charge nurse answered first. "Male 28, she said. 2 GSWs. Shoulder and left chest. They have been chasing his pressure the whole ride in. Specialty ammunition fragments." She tilted her head toward the woman. "Federal case," she added. The woman stepped forward. "Special Agent Dana Hale," she said. "We spoke on the phone." Lowell did not shake her hand. His gaze slid to the badge she held up, took in the seal, the photo, the codes. "This is a hospital," he said. "Not a federal annex. You do not make medical decisions here." "Understood," Hale said. "We are here because your hospital was the closest Level I trauma center when our asset was shot. He has information that cannot die with him. We need him alive. To keep him alive, we need a specific type of surgeon." "You have one," Markham said, already annoyed. "2, actually. I am standing in front of you, and Henry here has 30 years of cutting under his belt." "Neither of you have operated under mortar fire with no backup," Hale said quietly. "Neither of you have been trained to remove dozens of metal fragments from around a beating heart without a perfusion team waiting in the wings." Her eyes moved to Maya. "Dr. Rios," she said. Maya felt her stomach tighten. She had never met Hale in person, but she knew that tone. Calm, certain. The sound of someone who thought they had just found a crucial missing piece. "You have me at a disadvantage," Maya said. "Razor does not like being called by that name anymore," Hale said to Lowell, as if he was the one who needed context. "She prefers Maya now." The corridor seemed to contract. Low murmurs from down the hall faded. Even the hiss of the vents felt distant. Lowell looked from Hale to Maya. "Razor," he repeated. Maya kept her eyes on Hale. "I do not use that code name here," she said. "We know," Hale said. "We tried to respect that. For 3 years." Then a Russian intelligence officer decided he did not want to watch his government cripple American cities from the inside, and someone shot him in the chest with a bullet designed to turn into shrapnel. Now we do not have that luxury. "Who is he?" Lowell asked. "Alexei Morozov," Hale said. "Defected 18 months ago. He has been providing data on cyber attacks planned against critical infrastructure. The kind of attacks that do not just shut off lights, they shut off ventilators." Maya's jaw clenched. "What ammunition?" she asked. Hale opened a folder under her arm and slid an image out. A bullet, or what had been one. The tip was gone. The body split. "Fragmenting round," Hale said. "On impact, it breaks into multiple pieces. They disperse, move with blood flow, lodge in inconvenient places. We have seen this used before. When it hits close to the heart, the survival rate is almost 0, even with skilled surgeons." "Almost," Maya said. "Almost," Hale agreed. She stepped closer, lower her voice. "We lost 2 assets to this round in the last year," she said. "One died on a table in a secure facility with a full team and every piece of equipment you can imagine. The other never made it off the street." She nodded toward Trauma 2. "He is our 3rd shot at learning how to beat it," she said. Lowell folded his arms. "You cannot practice on him," he said. Hale shook her head once. "We are not here for practice," she said. "We are here because your hospital, for reasons still not entirely clear to me, employs someone who has already beat worse odds in worse conditions. A surgeon who can cut fast and precise when time is a luxury she does not have." She took a small breath. "We are here for Dr. Rios," she said. Lowell turned fully to Maya then. No reflection to buffer the look. No folder in between. "You lied on your application," he said. "About your age, your experience, your references." "Yes," she said. "You came into my hospital with a fabricated history," he said. "You let me believe you were just out of training. You let residents believe they were teaching you things you clearly already knew. I did not ask anyone to believe that," she said. "I just did not correct them." "That is not better," he said. "No," she agreed. "It is not." Haley glanced between them. "This reconciliation can wait until after surgery," she said. "From what I saw through that door, he does not have time for you two to resolve your trust issues." Markham stepped in. "Why her?" he asked. "What is she exactly?" Hale considered for a moment what to say in a hallway in a civilian hospital. "She is a board-certified surgeon with 8 years of service in a special activities medical unit," Hale said. "She has operated in Helmand, Aleppo, Odessa, and other places that do not show up on tourist brochures." She has performed damage control thoracotomies in basements on rooftops and in moving helicopters. Her survival numbers are classified. Markham stared. So she is a combat surgeon, he said. She is more than that, Hale said. She is what we send in when body bags are cheaper than evacuation. Maya felt the words land. They tasted like the dust of a dozen places she would never go back to. No one in this hospital signed up for classified surgery, Lowell said. No one in this hospital signed up to have their ICU ventilators shut off by a foreign power. Either, Hale said. If he dies, there are people waiting to make sure he does not take his information with him. People who will not be as interested in preserving his organs. Silence settled for a moment. The monitor in Trauma 2 beeped in an irregular pattern. Someone inside called for more suction. Maya looked at the half-open door, at the blood seeping through the tape, at the tremor in the nurse's hand as she adjusted a line. What do you need? She asked. Helly met her eyes. We need you to go in there and remove as many fragments as you can from around his heart without killing him, she said. We need you to do it quickly because the longer they float, the farther they travel. That is not what I asked, Maya said. What do you need from me beyond the surgery? Hale hesitated, then understood. The truth, she said. To your chief of surgery, to your team. No more shadows. We do not have the right to keep you hidden from the people whose lives you are shaping. Maya inclined her head. And in return, she asked. In return, the agency acknowledges that you resigned 3 years ago, Hale said. We will not pull you back into field operations. We will not use your current employment as leverage. We will approach you, if we approach you at all, the way we would any civilian consultant. Lowell watched every word. I want it in writing, he said. You will have it, Hale replied. She looked at Maya again. The other condition, Maya said, is that when I walk out of that operating room, if I get him through this, my position here is not automatically gone because of what you just learned about me. That is not my decision, Hale said. That is his. She tipped her head toward Lowell. He thought for a long moment, then nodded once. We will discuss your future after the case, he said. For now, you have an assignment. Trauma 2. We do not let patients die in the hallway. Maya took a breath. The air in the ER smelled of antiseptic sweat and the faint metallic tang from Trauma 2. Then I will need a team, she said. Markham on first assist, your best anesthesiologist, a scrub nurse who can move with me, access to fluoroscopy in the OR, and someone to pull up every image and lab we have on him on a large display. Lowell gestured to Markham. You heard her, he said. Or one, now. He turned back to Maya. You are not doing this in my trauma bay, he said. You get your room. They moved. Doors opened ahead of them, staff stepping aside as the group passed. Gurney wheels rattled over thresholds. The elevator ride up felt longer than it was. In OR1, the team snapped into place. Gown gloves, masks, monitors connected, anesthesia check. The room smelled of betadine and anticipation. Alexei Morozov lay on the table, skin pale under the harsh lights. His shoulder wound had been repacked. The chest dressing was soaked through, striped with fresh red. Maya stood at the foot of the table and looked at the displays. CT images stacked on the large screen. Cross-sections of chest, heart, lungs. The entry wound, the path of the bullet, the splatter of metallic fragments frozen in grayscale around the beating engine of his body. She counted them. 17 visible pieces, she said quietly. Some were obvious bright spots lodged in muscle and bone. Others were subtle, half hidden in shadows. Largest fragment, approximately 7 millimeters, she continued. Here between the third and fourth ribs. Smallest are less than a millimeter clustered near the pericardium. She traced one area with her gloved finger, following a line where a fragment might migrate. We will not get every microscopic piece, she said. We focus on anything big enough to cause a perforation or embolus. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Ma, glanced at the monitor. His pressure is barely holding, Ma said. 85/50 on 2 pressors in blood. We are on a clock, Maya said. She walked to the table and placed her hands on either side of his chest, feeling the faint rise and fall. Modified left anterior thoracotomy, she said to Markham. Single incision to access both the shoulder track and the area near the heart. We limit additional trauma. That is not textbook for this, Markham said. Neither is his injury, she answered. The scrub nurse passed her a marker. Maya drew the planned incision line, a gentle curve following the rib contour. Scalpel, she said. The weight of the instrument in her hand was familiar, almost comforting. She cut. Skin, subcutaneous tissue, intercostal muscles. Each layer opened with controlled pressure. Small vessels cauterized as they appeared. The smell of burned tissue rose thick and bitter. The rib spreader went in, metal against bone. The sound of it opening was a soft series of clicks. The view into his chest was narrow but adequate, the heartbeat against the pericardium a steady thump. Blood pooled where it should not. Shards of metal gleamed among the red. Sectional suction, she said. Low setting. I do not want the fragments moving more than they already have. The nurse adjusted the dial and passed the suction tip. Maya began the careful work of clearing the field. She removed the loose clots first, exposing the paths the fragments had taken. She identified the major ones lodged in muscle and lodged in the outer layer of the pericardium. Forceps, she said. One by one, she plucked the larger pieces out, dropping them into a metal basin that rang softly each time a fragment landed. Markham assisted retracting, anticipating where she needed space. Overhead in the gallery, a small crowd had gathered, despite no one having an official reason to be there. Residents, nurses, even a hospital administrator stood pressed to the glass. Jordan leaned against the rail, eyes fixed on the field. She is mapping it, she murmured, before she moves. She sees the whole board. Lowell stood beside her, arms crossed. Good surgeon's plan, he said. Not in minutes, Jordan said. Not like that. On the table, Alexei's heart rate ticked higher for a moment, then settled. Ma kept a running commentary of numbers without being asked. 90/58, he said. Heart rate 110, still tenuous. Maya worked without rushing, yet every motion had purpose. She removed the largest fragment wedged between two ribs, the metal catching the light as it came free. Then a smaller one from the edge of the pericardium, careful not to nick the membrane. Count, she asked. 9 so far, the scrub nurse said. We have more, Maya said. She looked at the screen again. There is a fragment that is not obvious on this plane, she said. Shadowed by bone. If it migrated, it will be close to the ascending aorta, maybe even tucked behind it. Markham frowned. You cannot see it, he said. I have seen this pattern before, she said. Different city, same ammunition. We almost missed it then. I am not missing it now. She nodded to Ma. Angle the fluoroscopy 15 degrees lateral, she said. Left side. The image on the screen shifted. Structures that had overlapped slid apart. There, in the narrow gap between the bright column of the aorta and the darker outline of lung, a tiny speck appeared. Barely more than a grain of rice, positioned where a careless move could let it scrape against the outer layer of the heart. Found you, Maya said under her breath. How do you reach that without tearing something important, Markham asked. Very carefully, she said. She extended her hand. Magnetic probe, vascular size, she said. Low pull, just enough to catch small ferromagnetic pieces. The nurse placed the slim wand-like instrument into her palm. Maya guided it into the chest eyes, flicking between the field and the fluoroscopy screen. The probe tip appeared as a faint marker on the image, inching toward the fragment. The room seemed to hold its breath. She brought the probe within a millimeter of the speck. If the pull was too strong, it could drag the fragment in a way she could not control. If it was too weak, nothing would happen. Increase the power, she said, 1 increment. The tech adjusted the dial. She felt it in her fingers before she saw it, a tiny resistance like a grain of sand tugged by a tide. On the screen, the fragment shifted. Slowly, almost reluctantly, it lifted away from the aorta and drifted toward the probe. Easy, she whispered. Come on, just you and me. Millimeter by millimeter, she drew the probe back, guiding the attached fragment along a path that would not cross anything vital. The speck cleared the shadow of the great vessel. It floated into a clearer field. Got it, she said. She withdrew the probe fully and held it over the basin. The fragment clicked off into the metal with a small, satisfying tap. The collective exhale in the room was almost audible. Fragment count, she asked. 10, the nurse said. 7 more on their list, they continued. By the time she removed the 17th piece, the basin held a glittering collection of small, deadly shapes. Some were jagged, some rounded. All had come within inches of turning Alexei's chest into a map of catastrophes. Check for active bleeds, she said. She irrigated the field again, watching for fresh red wells. A small artery along the pericardium spurted once when the fluid washed over it. She clipped it, tied it, moved on. Ma's voice cut through the focus. BP 110/65, he said. Heart rate 92. Pressors are tapering. Good, she said. Satisfied that no major sources of bleeding remained and that the most dangerous fragments were gone, she began the process of closing, layer by layer, reversing the path she had taken to get in. Pericardium intact, muscle approximated, ribs brought back together. The thoracotomy closed with careful sutures, each knot placed with the same precision she had used on a dusty cot miles from any city. When she tied the last stitch, she stepped back and looked at the numbers on the monitor. They held steady. Patient is stable, she said. All significant fragments removed. No apparent cardiac involvement. He will need intensive care and imaging to confirm, but right now he has a chance. She stripped off her gloves. The scar on her forearm stood out against the faint redness from scrubbing. For a moment she looked up into the gallery. Faces peered down through the glass. Jordan, Lowell, several residents, nurses who had drifted in on pretense. Their eyes were full, of questions of awe, of unease. Maya held Lowell's gaze. Whatever conversation waited outside that room, it would happen in a different context now. She turned away from the glass and walked toward the scrub room, her hands already reaching for the faucet handle. The water in the scrub sink ran too hot, fogging the lower edge of the mirror. Maya held her hands under it anyway, palms up, watching the pink flush creep back over skin that had been inside someone's chest for nearly 3 hours. The scent of betadine clung to her stubborn as smoke. The door swung inward, the sound of the OR behind her dulled, replaced by the quieter echo of the scrub room. "You do not usually leave before the post-op briefing," Lowell said. He still wore his cap. His mask hung loose at his throat. There was a thin streak of someone else's blood along his forearm, half wiped away. "Anesthesiology has the handoff," Maya said. "ICU is ready. There was nothing left for me to say in there." "There is plenty to say," he replied. He stepped closer, but not so close that anyone looking in would think they were arguing. He rested one shoulder against the tile arms folded. "That was extraordinary," he said. She did not look up from the lather on her fingers. "It was necessary," she said. "You found a fragment that did not show clearly on the standard views," he said. "You navigated it away from his aorta with a magnet like you were teasing a splinter out of wood. You removed 17 pieces of metal from around a beating heart in under 3 hours. You saw the images," she said. "They told the story. The images did not make the decisions," he said. "You did." She turned off the water and reached for a towel. "Are we doing this part now?" she asked. "The part where you demand to know who trained me and I give you vague answers you do not like." Before he could answer, the door opened again. Agent Dana Hale stepped inside, closing it behind her with a careful hand. Her coat was off now. She wore a plain dark suit, the kind that blended into backgrounds in any government building. "We need to talk," she said. "Your asset is still in the OR," Maya said. "He is not out of danger." "I know," Hale said. "I also know there is a window right now when both of you are free enough to hear something you should have been told years ago." Lowell's attention sharpened. "Years ago?" he asked. Hale nodded toward the hallway. "There is a conference room on 4 we have borrowed," she said. "It is secure enough for this discussion." Lowell hesitated, then gave a short nod. 5 minutes, he said. "Then I have to talk to ICU and the board." "It will not take long to change the way she thinks about herself," Hale said softly. She opened the door. They followed. The conference room was small with no windows. A long table, 8 chairs, whiteboard on one wall. It looked like any other space where people argued over budgets and schedules. The difference sat in the middle of the table, a compact black device with a single blinking light. "Signal jammer," Hale said when she saw Lowell looking at it. "We are not recording this, and neither is anyone else." She took a folder from her bag. The cover had colored stripes along the top markings familiar to anyone who had ever signed a non-disclosure agreement. "Odessa," she said, sliding the folder toward Maya. "November 3 years ago." The name scraped something raw inside Maya. She stayed standing, hands flat on the cool surface of the table towel, still clutched between her fingers. "I told you I was done with that chapter," she said. "You thought you were done because you thought you failed," Hale said. "You need to see what we saw." She opened the folder. Grainy photos sat on the first page: a basement room, concrete walls, a folding table pressed into service as an operating surface, a man on it in a blood-soaked shirt, a woman in a surgical cap bent over him, arms deep in his abdomen. Her headlamp cast a hard circle of light. Even in low resolution, Maya recognized her own posture. She looked away. "We were extracting a U.S. diplomat," Hale said. "He had information about troop movements and supply lines that Moscow did not want out of Ukraine. The safe house was compromised. Shots fired. He took one to the gut on the way down the back stairs." Maya's chest felt tight. The air in the room seemed thinner. "I know," she said. "I was there." Hale turned the page. A medical report, the kind written in haste by someone who knew they might not leave with the hard copy. Vital signs, wound description, field interventions, handwritten notes in the margin where the typed form had not been enough. "You worked on him for 43 minutes, Hale said. "Under fire, with a single medic assistant. You clamped 3 major vessels, packed and repacked his abdomen. He coded twice. You brought him back once. He bled out," Maya said. The words were flat. She had carried them for so long, they weighed almost nothing in her mouth anymore. The real weight lived in her chest. "I could not stop it." "You could not have," Hale said. She flipped to the last page in the folder. "This is a toxicology report," she said. "Dated 3 weeks ago. The diplomat's widow requested a second autopsy when some new information came to light about an FSB asset in the embassy." She tapped the highlighted section. "Traces of a synthetic anticoagulant were found in his system," she said. "A compound developed by Russian intelligence. It prevents blood from clotting no matter what you do. It was administered hours before he was shot." Maya stared at the lines of text without seeing the letters. "So he was dead before he hit my table," she said. "He was dying before he left the embassy," Hale said. The shot just made sure it looked like battle trauma and not internal sabotage. The towel in Maya's hands had twisted into a tight cord. She loosened her grip, fingers tingling. "You knew this," she said. "You knew he was poisoned?" "We suspected," Hale said. "We did not know." Not at your clearance level. Not then. The second autopsy confirmed it. The sample was preserved. The lab had new markers to test for. Maya let herself sink into a chair. The vinyl creaked. For 3 years I've gone over that night, she said. Every clamp, every stitch, every decision. I thought if I had moved faster, if I had angled differently, if I had been smarter, he would have lived. You did not fail that man, Hale said. The system around him did. The asset who spiked his drink did. The people who let that asset get that close did. You were the only part of that chain that worked. Silence settled between them. Lowell sat across from her, the file pushed slightly toward him now. He did not reach for it. He watched her instead. He had seen residents crack under far less. A misdiagnosis, a bad outcome, a lawsuit. This was something else. Years of guilt rearranging themselves in real time. You walked away after Odessa, he said finally. Changed your name. Your story. You came here and tried to pretend none of that had happened. I tried to be a doctor who never had to make those choices again, Maya said. And now he asked. She looked at her hands. The scar on her forearm caught the overhead light. She rotated her wrist slowly, as if seeing it from a new angle. Now I know the choice I made that night was not the wrong one, she said. It was the only one I had. I just did not have enough information to see it that way. Hale closed the folder and slid it back into her bag. I did not come here today planning to show you Odessa, she said. We keep those files tight. But after what you did in that OR, keeping this from you felt like an error. She switched off the jammer. The hum in the room shifted almost imperceptibly. The rest is between you and your hospital, she said, standing. And your conscience, if you still feel the need to wrestle with it. She left without waiting for a response. When the door clicked shut, Lowell exhaled. The board wants to meet you, he said. Officially? Maya lifted her gaze. Now she asked. In an hour, he said. They have been talking since the mass casualty, the gallbladder, the splenectomy, now this. He rubbed the back of his neck. I told them you were either the biggest liability we have ever taken on, he said, or the most important asset. Which do you believe, she asked. I am still deciding, he said. Come upstairs when they call. Try not to disappear in the meantime. He got to his feet and left her with the empty room and the faint ghost of Odessa still lingering in the air. The boardroom on the administrative floor was larger, brighter, with a window that looked out over the harbor. Ships rode low in the water under a gray sky. Gulls wheeled in slow circles. Around the polished table sat the hospital's leadership. Margaret Chen, the CEO in a dark blazer and a calm, assessing posture. The chief financial officer, neat beard tablet in front of him. The chief of medicine. 2 members of the board, one in a tailored suit, the other in scrubs under a jacket. Lowell took a seat near the middle. Maya stood at the far end of the table until Margaret gestured to the chair opposite her. Dr. Rios, Margaret said. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Please sit. Maya sat. The chair felt too soft. We have had a busy 24 hours, Margaret said. Even by this hospital's standards. She tapped a stack of papers with one manicured finger. In that time, you have identified an early peritonitis missed by standard imaging, performed an emergency splenectomy in a trauma bay under pressure, and removed 17 bullet fragments from around a patient's heart in a procedure our trauma chief described as unlikely to be replicated by anyone else in this building. Her gaze stayed level. We have also learned that you are not, in fact, a typical first-year surgical resident, she said. You have 8 years of field experience with a federal agency experience that was not disclosed in your application. That is correct, Maya said. People who lie on their applications are usually escorted out of this building, the chief of medicine said. For cause. I know, Maya said. The problem we have, Margaret said, is that your deception does not match your performance. The more we find out about you, the more useful you appear. The CFO cleared his throat. Useful, he repeated, not entirely approving of the word. Margaret gave him a brief look. Dr. Lowell has made a recommendation, she said. So has Agent Hale, although she does not sit on this board. They both agree that your skills represent an opportunity as much as a risk. She folded her hands. We would like to offer you a position as a senior attending in trauma surgery, effective immediately, she said, with full operating privileges and a role in departmental leadership. The room felt smaller again. I am still nominally a first year, Maya said. There are other residents ahead of me. There are, Margaret said. None of them just did what you did today. This is not a decision we make lightly. It is also not one we can ignore. The chief of medicine spoke. This comes with conditions, he said. We will need to verify your credentials through whatever channels will let us see them. We will need full transparency with the rest of the trauma team. No more invented histories, no more blacked out references. And we will need a commitment, Margaret said. If we invest in building something around you, we do not want you gone in 6 months. Building what, Maya asked. Margaret slid another folder across the table. This one did not have classified markings. It had a hospital logo on the front. We have been talking with military medicine liaisons for years, she said, about ways to bring combat-proven techniques into civilian trauma care. Until now, those conversations have been theoretical. You give us a chance to make them practical. She nodded at the folder. That is a proposal for a tactical resuscitation and surgery program, she said, a training initiative based here. Teaching the skills you have acquired to our residents, nurses, paramedics, and partners at other hospitals. Maya opened the folder. Budget estimates, curriculum outlines, a draft schedule, a line at the bottom with a number that made her blink. $2 million in initial funding, the CFO said, from a combination of internal resources and grants that Agent Hale has indicated will be available if you agree to participate. Silence held for a moment. So Margaret said, senior attending, program lead, a chance to turn what you have done in secret into something that can help more than one patient at a time. Maya closed the folder slowly. I have conditions of my own, she said. Margaret's mouth curved the ghost of a smile. I would be surprised if you did not, she said. The first condition, Maya said, is that I do not do this alone. She tapped the folder where the proposed program outline lay. If you expect me to lead a tactical resuscitation and surgery program, I want a co-director, she said. Someone who understands both civilian and military mindsets. Someone who was already here before you learned my story. She looked toward Lowell. I want Dr. Jordan Kim as my deputy, she said. Equal authority over curriculum. Equal say in how we integrate this into the hospital. The chief of medicine shifted in his seat. She is a third-year resident, he said. Not even finished with training. She is finished with pretending she does not see what is in front of her, Maya said. That is more than I can say for some people with titles. Lowell's mouth twitched. Jordan is one of our strongest residents, he said. She has family history in military medicine. She is adaptable. If this program is going to touch both worlds, she is not a bad bridge. Margaret noted something on her pad. Co-leadership is unconventional, she said. But then so is everything about this. She nodded once. Condition accepted, she said. What else? Maya flipped a page in the folder. This program cannot be a closed circle, she said. Not just attendings and senior residents patting each other on the back. I want it open. Residents, nurses, paramedics, med students who can handle it, even external applicants from partner hospitals. That is a liability minefield, the CFO said. Cross-institutional training raises all kinds of exposure. Not training them is a bigger risk, Maya said. You just saw what it looks like when someone bleeds in a way your textbooks do not cover. She held his gaze. We get waivers, she said. We get legal language. We make people sign that they understand what they are learning. But we do not hoard this. Margaret looked at the chief of medicine. Can we structure it as a regional training center, she asked. With appropriate paperwork? With enough lawyers, we can structure anything, he said. We would need clear guidelines. Vetting. But it is possible. Condition noted, Margaret said. Continued. Maya hesitated. The last piece mattered as much as the rest. You want combat techniques in your hospital, she said. You should also expect combat fallout. People who learn to move like this under this kind of pressure carry it with them. She placed her hand flat on the folder. I want built-in psychological support, she said. Not just pamphlets. Scheduled access. Therapists who understand trauma, both seeing it and causing it. Residents, nurses, paramedics, me. Anyone who trains under this program gets mental health care as part of the package. The room went quiet. That is expensive, the CFO said. That is non-negotiable, Maya replied. Margaret studied her. You are asking us to acknowledge that what you teach may change people in ways they did not anticipate, she said. I am asking you to stop pretending it does not, Maya said. Margaret sat back. Very well, she said. Mental health support becomes a line item, not an afterthought. She glanced down the table. Any other conditions likely to bankrupt us, she asked. Only one, Maya said. You stop asking me to pretend I'm someone I am not. If I take this position, if I stand in front of rooms and teach, they get the truth. Not the details of Odessa or Helmand, but enough to understand why I do what I do. Lowell nodded slowly. If we are going to ask people to learn from you, they deserve that much, he said. Margaret closed her pad. Then we have an agreement, she said. Pending credential verification and some very tense conversations with our malpractice carrier. She extended her hand. Welcome to the senior staff, Dr. Rios, she said. Or whatever name you decide to keep using. Maya took her hand. Her fingers were warm and dry. The handshake was firm. The scar on Maya's forearm was visible just under the cuff of her sleeve. No one in the room looked away. 6 months later, her hands were on a lectern instead of inside someone's chest. The conference hall at Camden Harbor Medical Center had never been this full. Rows of chairs packed with people from 17 hospitals. White coats and polo shirts as scrubs in different shades of blue and green, a few uniforms with military insignia tucked discreetly under jackets. At the back, cameras from local news stations sat on tripods. Red recording lights blinked. On the screen behind Maya, a slide displayed numbers. Over the last 6 months, she said we have run 4 full training cycles through the Tactical Resuscitation and Surgery Program. 20 participants per cycle, residents, nurses, flight medics, paramedics from the city and from rural counties, 1 Navy corpsman on leave. Her voice carried without strain. In that time, trauma mortality at this hospital has decreased by 31%, she said. Time to critical intervention is down by an average of 18 minutes. Complications from delayed bleeding have dropped by 40%. She let the numbers sit in the air. These are not miracles, she said. They are repetitions. Patterns learned under stress and then brought into a place with better lighting and cleaner floors. Jordan stood to her right, tablet in hand. When Maya stepped back, she moved forward. The key alignment, Jordan said, has been pairing aggressive intervention techniques with ethical oversight. Combat medicine teaches you to cut when you are not sure you should wait. Civilian medicine reminds you that the person on the table has to live with the choices you make afterward. She clicked to the next slide. A case. A construction worker whose falling rebar had pierced his chest. A trainee from TRAS-P had recognized signs of pericardial tamponade in the field, performed a modified intervention en route, and brought him in alive. This patient does not know his life was saved because a paramedic in the city learned a procedure that was once only taught in Kandahar, Jordan said. He does not need to. What matters is that the knowledge moved. In the front row, Margaret watched with her hands folded, expression unreadable. Beside her, the chief of medicine took notes, occasionally nodding. Near the side wall, a man in a Defense Department suit leaned against a pillar, arms crossed, taking everything in. After the presentation, the hall dissolved into clusters of conversation. Coffee cups, questions, exchanged cards. The DoD representative found Lowell by the snack table. Impressive, he said. The numbers, I mean. The stitching metaphors are lost on me. Lowell snorted. You should see the parts we did not put on the slides, he said. The individual cases. We would like to, the man said, formally. He handed over a card. The department is prepared to offer $8 million over 3 years to help scale this curriculum beyond your walls, he said. We want standard modules for bases transitioning soldiers to civilian care. We want training for medics coming back from deployment. You already built the framework. We would like to fund the scaffolding. Lowell looked across the room to where Maya stood listening to a question from a young paramedic. Her posture was relaxed, one hand gesturing toward the diagrams on a portable screen. On her badge under her name, someone in HR had finally approved a second-line trauma surgery and TRAS-P director. I will bring it to her, he said. On the other side of the room, near a row of posters, a man in his late 20s hovered, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He wore a resident badge from Portland General. His hair was cropped short. There was a thin tan line where a watch had been. He waited until the crowd around Maya thinned. Dr. Rios, he said. She turned. Yes, she said. I am Jake Harrison, he said. Second-year surgery, Portland. I wanted to thank you for the talk. That is kind, she said. You are the farthest traveler, I think. He smiled quickly, then lost it. I was Army before med school, he said. 3 tours in Afghanistan. I left it off my residency application. I did not want programs to see me as too much, too tactical, not soft enough for civilian patients. He looked down at his hands. I have been hiding the way I move, he said, the way I think when things go bad. I slow myself down to match everyone else. After what you said today, I am not sure that is the right thing to do. Do you have pictures, she asked. He blinked. Of what he asked. Your sutures, she said. From a recent case? He hesitated, then pulled out his phone, thumb swiping to a gallery. He held it out. Appendectomy incisions stared up from the screen. Clean, even, not small and secure. The spacing had a rhythm she recognized. Those are war stitches, she said. Efficient. Strong. You could shorten your OR time by 15 minutes on closure alone if you stop second-guessing them. He looked at her, wary hope in his eyes. So I should not hide it, he said. She handed the phone back. Your patients do not need half of you, she said. They need all of you. The part that learned in the sand and the part that learned in simulation labs. He swallowed, nodded. Thank you, he said. I have been waiting 3 years for someone to say that out loud. Her pager buzzed, a soft reminder against her hip. Not a stat call, just a scheduled nudge. Later that afternoon, she stood in a small office off the administrative wing phone, to her ear. The harbor glittered under thin winter light outside the window. Margaret's voice came through clearly from down the hall. The Defense Department offer is on my desk, Margaret said. $8 million, 3 years. They want curriculum site visits, outcomes data. Of course they do, Maya said. We do not have to say yes, Margaret said. Maya watched a container ship slide past the hospital's edge of the water, slow and massive. If we do, she said, I have more conditions. Margaret laughed quietly. I'm starting to suspect you do not agree to anything without a list, she said. All right. Let us hear it. TRASP stays based here, Maya said. We do not move the center to a base or a federal campus. If they want us, they come to Baltimore, or we go as visitors. This is a hospital, not an annex. Reasonable, Margaret said. Next. Jordan remains co-director, Maya said. Equal pay, equal title. This program cannot hinge on me alone. If a bus hits me, it needs to keep running. Morbid, Margaret said. Practical, noted. And we establish a scholarship fund, Maya said. Full tuition and living support for veterans who want to go into medicine, with built-in mental health resources. People like Jake, people who already have the instincts we are trying to teach. There was a pause on the line. That will be costly, Margaret said. That will be worth it, Maya said. Another pause. She could almost hear Margaret weighing numbers against faces. I will take it to the board, Margaret said. After she hung up, Maya checked her phone again. A new message sat at the top of her texts. The sender listed as an unknown number, but she knew who it was before she opened it. The photo showed a group of Marines in desert camouflage sun behind them. In the middle, Staff Sergeant Cole Walker grinned, a faint line visible under his shirt, where the scar would be. His arm was draped over another man's shoulders. The text beneath it read, "Back with my squad. They made us run your protocols at Lejeune. Kids complain, then they see the survival stats. Your hands reached farther than you think. Thank you." Maya sat back in the chair, the phone warm in her palm. Outside, the harbor doors slid open for a delivery. People moved through them with boxes and carts in and out in a rhythm that felt steady. Her pager buzzed again, a reminder about the evening training session in the simulation lab. 20 new faces waiting to learn how to keep people alive when monitors screamed and time ran thin. She slipped the phone back into her pocket, and headed for the door. The hospital at night had its own kind of tide. Visitors flowed out, lights dimmed in the halls. The noise dropped to a steady murmur, the constant undertone of machines and muted voices. From the windows of the upper floors, the harbor was a sheet of black glass broken by scattered points of light. In the simulation lab on the third floor, 20 trainees clustered around a mock trauma bay. Plastic torsos lay on gurneys, tubes, and catheters sprouting from them. Monitors showed pre-recorded vitals that sped up or slowed based on how they were handled. Maya watched from the back, arms lightly folded, letting Jordan run this block. The modes on the screen had names: blunt, chest, penetrating, abdomen, multi-system. The faces around the bed were a mix of residents, nurses, and paramedics. Sweat darkened the collars of their scrubs despite the cool room. Jordan stood at the foot of the bed, tablet in hand. You have 3 minutes to recognize and treat the immediate life threat, she said. Nothing you do after that matters if you miss the first one. A paramedic named Ortiz called out the basics as they worked. Airway clear, breath sounds unequal on the left, trachea midline, chest rise asymmetrical. Look at the numbers, Jordan said. The monitor beeped in a fast, thin rhythm. The blood pressure on the screen dipped with each passing second. Tamponade, one of the residents said. We need to open the pericardium. In the field, a nurse asked. Depends how far you are from here, Ortiz said. They had heard variations of that question for months. How far is too far? How close is close enough? When does extreme become necessary? Maya let them argue for another 30 seconds, then raised a hand. Pause, she said. The monitor froze. The plastic chest stopped its mechanical rise and fall. Everyone turned toward her. You are not being graded on who says the right word first, she said. You are being graded on how fast you all move when reality does not match the algorithm in your head. Ortiz lifted his chin. In real life, he said, I would be calling flight for this guy. In real life, your radio might be out, Maya said. In real life, the road might be blocked. In real life, the difference between you cutting and you watching might be 5 minutes on a bad day. She walked toward the bed, stopping just before she reached the mannequin. You are not learning tricks, she said. You are learning how to see patterns when everything is loud and bleeding and smells like gasoline. She looked at the frozen monitor. The stylized heartbeats glowed green and too perfect. Reset the scenario, she said. Closer to what you saw in Baltimore last week. Jordan tapped the tablet. The monitor flashed. New numbers appeared. The man on the screen had chest trauma and a dropping pressure. The trainees leaned in. Before they could act, the overhead speaker crackled. Trauma alert, the intercom voice said. Multiple casualties incoming from highway tanker explosion. All available trauma and surgical staff report to the emergency department. Everyone in the room went still for half a heartbeat. The simulated alarm on the monitor suddenly sounded smaller, next to the real one bleeding through the ceiling. Jordan looked at Maya. Looks like the lab just got moved downstairs, she said. Maya nodded. You are all on my roster tonight, she said to the trainees. You wanted to see how this works in real time. This is your chance. They moved as a group toward the door. Badges were clipped straight, laces checked, gloves and masks grabbed from the bins outside the lab. The elevator seemed too slow. They took the stairs instead, feet thudding on concrete, breath echoing up and down the well. On the ground floor, the emergency department was already shifting. Staff emerged from side rooms drawn by the call. The charge nurse directed traffic at the central desk, her voice steady pen, moving across a whiteboard that listed incoming units. Fire on scene, she was saying. Leak from the tanker contained but multiple burn victims. 2 critical, 3 serious, unknown number of walking wounded, being diverted to nearby hospitals. She caught sight of Maya and the cluster behind her and ticked a mental box. Trauma 1 and 2 for criticals, she said. 3 and 4 for serious. Resus teams split. TRAS-P group with Dr. Rios. She tossed a set of printed triage notes across the counter. Here, she said. So you do not accuse me of making it too easy. The doors to the ambulance bay sounded their double beep. The first rig backed in red lights, splashing across the damp concrete. Firefighters spilled out with the paramedics' soot streaking their faces. Trauma 1, someone called. Male 40s blast injuries, facial burns, possible inhalation. Trauma 2, another voice answered. Female 30s thrown from vehicle, flail, chest, unstable. A third gurney turned toward Trauma 3. Male 20s, the paramedic pushing it yelled. Driver from the car behind the tanker. Shrapnel to the chest, burns to the arms. He was awake on scene, but he crashed in the rig. We got him back, for now. 3, the charge nurse said. Rios, that one is yours. Take your people. Maya stepped aside as the gurney shot into the bay. The patient on it was slight shoulders, narrow under the burned remains of a t-shirt. The front of his chest was mottled red and white where the heat had kissed and then devoured. A jagged black-edged wound near his sternum steamed faintly in the cool air. Soot ringed his mouth and nose. His eyes fluttered, then rolled back. BP 60/30 and falling, the paramedic said. Heart rate 140, O2 sats in the 70s until we bagged him. Airway first, Maya said. Ortiz, you are on airway. Kim, you are with me. Harrison, you are online access and blood. They fell into place without needing more detail. The monitor picked up the thread from the field. The beep was high and fast, the line spiking in nervous peaks. A respiratory therapist slid in at the head of the bed, helping Ortiz secure the tube. Tubin, Ortiz called after a moment. Breath sounds present, but diminished on the left. Bagging. Firework to the chest, a nurse muttered. Not a firework, Maya said. Shrapnel. She leaned over the wound. The edges were ragged, the tissue charred. Burn and blast and penetrating trauma all in one unlucky spot. Fast exam, she said. Now. One of the residents reached for the ultrasound machine wheels, squealing as he dragged it closer. Gel probe screen. The image flickered, then sharpened. Pericardial effusion, he said. There is fluid around the heart. How much, Maya asked. Enough to make me nervous, he said. Then it is enough to make him dead if we wait, she said. She looked up. The faces around the bed were intent, but she could see the hesitation along the edges. They had practiced this, in plastic, in simulation, on slides. This was different. The smell of burned hair, the heat still coming off his skin, the way the monitor shrieked every time his heart stuttered. Talk to me, she said. Options. Pericardiocentesis, Jordan said. Under ultrasound guidance, needle through the subxiphoid area, drain the fluid. Or open the pericardium, Harrison said. Direct visualization, more invasive. Invasive is relative when his heart is suffocating in his own blood, Maya said. She watched the monitor. BP 50/28. The numbers had gone from bad to statistical. The room seemed to tilt for a second. The combination of chest wound, dropping pressure, panicked. Beep scratched at an old memory. A folding table in a concrete room. A man on it. The feeling of not being fast enough. She took a breath. The air in this room was cleaner. The equipment better. The walls did not shake. She stepped closer to the trainees. You have been studying this for months, she said. You know the anatomy. You have felt this scenario in your bones since the day you signed up for this course. This is where you decide whether that work comes with you when the plastic turns to skin. Ortiz looked up from the head of the bed. Call, he said. Maya looked at Harrison. You wanted permission to stop shrinking, she said. Here it is. He swallowed once. Open, he said. Good, she said, and where? Left anterior thoracotomy, he said. 4th or 5th intercostal space. Do it, she said. She stepped back just enough to let him in, but not far enough to let him fall. Gloves snapped tighter around his wrists. The scrub nurse placed a scalpel in his hand. For a heartbeat, it hung in the air. Then he cut. The line was clean. Not as smooth as hers, but true. Blood welled, then slowed as the intercostals were divided and the rib spreader eased the space open. The heart appeared glistening under a tight, strained pericardium. See it, Maya said. Say it. Pericardium is tense, Harrison said. Dark blood inside. Tamponade. How do you fix it, she asked. He picked up the scissors. The nurse held out, hands only barely shaking. Small nick in the pericardium away from the phrenic nerve, he said. Then extend, let the blood out. Follow your hands, she said, not your fear. He made the cut. Dark blood flowed. The pericardium relaxed. The heart jumped, then beat more freely. On the monitor, the pressure bumped and held, the beeping slowed by a fraction, dropping in pitch. BP 70/40, the nurse said. Climbing. Not enough yet, Maya said, but better. They suctioned. They checked the chambers for obvious injury. No major tear, just the accumulated fluid choking the rhythm. Pack, Maya said. Loose. Give it room to move. They placed gauze carefully. Ma adjusted the ventilator settings. The room's tension loosened a notch. BP 85/48, the nurse said. Heart rate 120, trending down. Get blood running, Maya said. Warm it. Burns will make this messy. The next ambulance hit the bay. Then another. Other teams moved into other rooms. Screams, arguments, questions. The hospital filled with the smell of smoke, and antiseptic, and adrenaline. In Trauma 3, the first fire was under control. Maya looked at the faces around the bed. Harrison's eyes were wide behind his shield, but there was a set to his jaw that had not been there before. Ortiz exhaled slowly. Jordan's shoulders dropped half an inch. He lives because you opened his chest in time, she said. Do not forget what that feels like. Not because you should chase it, because you should respect it. They began the process of closing, of stabilizing, of handing off to ICU. When the patient finally left the bay, escorted by nurses and machines, the room felt larger. Maya stepped into the doorway. The hall outside was still lit bright. Trauma 1 and 2 were occupied. Staff moved in quick lines between rooms. A burned child cried somewhere down the corridor, the sound thin and high. The doors to the ambulance bay slid open again, letting in a blast of cold night air that smelled of diesel and wet asphalt. The siren of another arriving rig warbled, then cut out. Maya wiped a stray line of blood from her wrist with a towel. The scar on her forearm glowed pale against the flushed skin. She looked at it without flinching. Behind her, someone called her name. Dr. Rios, we have another one. She turned toward the voice. At the far end of the hall, a nurse stood in the entrance to Trauma 4, hand on the doorframe. Inside, a figure lay on a bed, monitors already attached, numbers flickering into life. Maya walked toward her. Each step carried the echo of other corridors, other thresholds. Bunkers and tents and basements. Scrub rooms and ORs and trauma bays. The door to Trauma 4 stood open. She crossed it without slowing, hands already reaching for gloves. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.